Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Let's Have a Conversation. And for today's episode, we are going to be diving in with a book called The Three Melissas, written by Diana Bowman and Diane Nilan, who are two longtime advocates and professionals that have spent collectively over 75 years learning about family homelessness in the U.S. From their respective positions, they've provided abundant and valuable information and assistance to communities, educators, service providers, and policymakers. At the heart of their efforts has always been the commitment to convey the combined challenges of being homeless and raising children, and to provide tips to families survive their hardships. So this book project took their mission to another level, requiring help from experts, namely parents who have lived experience of homelessness. And featured in this book are three mothers, all named Melissa, who offer insights into what it's like to be homeless with small children. They also provide scores of practical tips and words of encouragement to support and inspire other parents facing homelessness. And the purpose of this book, The Three Melissas, it offers practical advice that will support parents experiencing homelessness and help reduce tensions between families and those that are trying to help them. It will also offer insights to educators, agency professionals, and policymakers to alleviate family homelessness. So thank you so much, Diana and Diane. We welcome you to the podcast, and we really thank you for your willingness to talk about the book that you both have written.
Happy to be here and happy to share share about the book.
Yes. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to give a little summary of the book. So the summary of The Three Melissas. Who knows more about family homelessness than the parents who experienced it? The Three Melissas, the practical guide to surviving family homelessness, is a unique book of wisdom from three mothers named Melissa. Now, would you say I kind of summarized the book pretty much there? Pretty much, right? All right.
Well,
so,
with that, I'm sorry, with that,
Yep.
with that summary, I just want to say right off the bat, I think this is a very unique and innovative approach. And while the book is a guide for those who are currently experiencing homelessness or have lived the experience, it is absolutely something that is a great book for the professionals and those in the education world. And we'll continue to talk about that. But I really appreciated the unique and innovative approach, and just want to congratulate you both on a job well done on that.
Yes, same.
Well, thank you. It's good to have somebody recognize the brilliance behind the book.
You two won't mind sharing just a little bit about yourself, but most of all, how you two met and how you became working together, and then, coming up with writing The Three Melissas.
Yeah, I think Diane and I have been sort of running in the same circles for almost 25 years now. I was the director of the National Center for Homeless Education, and was going to lots of conferences, lots of trainings, and presenting on the McKinney-Vento Act and tips and strategies to help schools and school districts implement the McKinney-Vento Act. And Diane was, taking sort of another parallel track where she was doing a lot of advocacy work and a lot of, bringing awareness from different projects that she was doing. And we just kept, bumping into each other and talking to each other. And I guess the big break for me was after about 20 years, I retired and had lots of opportunities opening up. I certainly didn't want to give up this work. And so that's when I started having conversations with Diane that maybe we should do some things together. And, maybe we should do some things that would be to really sort of get information in the hands of people in a very different way. And certainly Diane's approach and the things that she was doing really helped me get in closer touch with homeless families.
Yeah, I just remember Diana coming up to me, as she said, we have bumped into each other at conferences and all, but she came up to me at one conference and said, I want to work for Heroes. I'm going, well, I'm a one-woman organization here, so there's room for you in the organization. And I knew that she's just a stellar person in this whole area of family homelessness and education issues and all. So I'm like, I snatched her up, and so we collaborated on the book, the Charlie book, Ways to Help Homeless Kids. And I know it's been distributed far and wide in your neck of the woods. And it was just delightful working for her, with her, and on that project. And so she got bored again, and we talked, and I had come up with the idea of the three Melissas, and she was a willing participant. So I guess I'm just going to say that, we're a good team for, doing things a little bit out of the ordinary that hopefully will make a difference.
Now, what?
And we live in the same state now.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go.
Oh,
The
nice.
state
We're
of confusion. So
Well, I was going to say, I've been in that state with you, Diane, for
yeah. Yeah.
So what was your motivation then behind writing the book? You said you already have come up with writing the three Melissas. So what inspired that?
Well, in my traveling around the past 20 years around the country, I do a lot of driving and going from place to place when I would do film work and presentations and all. And I'm driving along just kind of like, how can we get the story about family homelessness up, up in the news feed a little bit more, because people just don't know about it still. After all these years, after all of our collective stellar efforts, people are just clueless about family homelessness. And I don't know, the three Melissas, I kept bumping into them too, and their stories were different, but the same. And I also knew that they were very articulate and passionate and willing to share their stories. And I just like the three Melissas, like that was just a weird thing to keep. It just kept gnawing at me. And so I'm like, well, what if we told the story of family homelessness from their perspective? And I asked each one of them if they would be willing to do that, and they said wholeheartedly yes. And so we just took it from there. Melissa N was the first Melissa I met, and she was actually the first mom I met when I first started traveling for Hear Us. And I literally will say that I did not know what I was doing. I remember driving to their trailer in Milton, Florida, thinking, oh crap, I don't know how to use the video camera that I have. I don't know really what I'm doing at all. But I want to get the stories, and I knew that that was going to work. So I figured, well, I'll just run with not knowing anything else. So, and I was just so impressed with her and her kids, talking about their situation. And so we kept in contact. And they were in a FEMA trailer after Hurricane Ivan, and so that was one family. And then Melissa A in Illinois, I got contacted by somebody in an agency in DuPage County, where I was working, where we're located technically, and she said, I've got a family that's stuck in a motel. They need some money to help keep the roof over their head. And it was a mom with 5 kids at the time. And I'm like, crap, 5 kids, in a motel. And so I'm like, I got to go meet her. And I happened to be in the area. So I went over to the hotel and met her, and just, realized again, you've got a mom here that's doing the best she can in the worst circumstances. And so, my agency was not blessed with a lot of money, but we shared a little money to help keep the roof over their heads, and sort of kept in contact with her. And so that was family too. And then Melissa T in Kansas was connected to me for the film project that I did for the state of Kansas. And I went to Hope, Kansas, which is like one of the tiniest little towns I've filmed in, and drove down the little road and met this mom who sat on the porch and shared her story, like literally for 2 hours. I was like, whoa, I just kind of said, tell me about your situation. And it was like, oh my gosh. And hearing her story was just like, this is the story of so many parents, of the struggles that she went through as a kid, and then how she's trying to raise, her two kids and all. And it just ended up being one of those situations where she was so open with her life. And as things went on, I realized she had nobody to help her. There was no agency in Hope, Kansas. We kind of called it hopeless a lot, but so we ended up just keeping in contact, and then I was able to help her get into some subsidized housing in nearby Manhattan, Kansas. And we've kept in contact since then too. And so it was relationships that were just by chance, and they were purposeful. And so I just any family that I interviewed over these past 20 years, I said, I'll do anything I can do to keep sharing your story. And so that just niggled at my little mind as I was driving down some back road somewhere, and just started thinking about three Melissas. That's kind of a little catchy thing. And from there to being a best-selling published author in New York. No, I guess it's not New York Times yet, but we're getting there. So yeah, that's kind of how I met them, and that's the story behind them.
I think that through your, like you said at the beginning, how you did not know how to do anything, and you were like, okay, I'm just going to record, I'm going to do what I can. You provided an opportunity where you listened intentionally and you cared. And I think that is why your videos were such a great resource for me as I started 28 years ago, and I was 25 and new to the whole thing from that perspective, and using those videos, and to be able to really have people be comfortable talking to you is because you are listening, and that comes through. And I think that that's why you're able to keep up these relationships, and that's why this book is so important, is to also say that we need to listen. We're not just handing out things, we're not helping them with things. We need to actually just spend some time and listen. We can't fix everything, we acknowledge that, but gosh, just listening can just be such an important piece. And where you're with that one Melissa for 2 hours, that probably helped her and her mental health more than can be measured. So I always appreciate your videos and resources from that lens.
That means a lot.
Now, Diana, did you get to meet the three Melissas?
No, I actually will have the pleasure of meeting them next week. We are bringing them to North Carolina for a national book launch. But we've had a number of interviews with them, and we chat on Facebook, and I feel like I know them at this point. I mean, it's just been really rewarding just to be part of just getting to know them, just understanding their story. And there's a big difference between reading a paragraph about what their lives are like, and just being on the phone or on a Zoom call where, they're describing what they've experienced. Not just, I mean, they tell their stories, but also you get a sense of the immediate stress and challenges that they're facing just every single day. It just kind of brings it home in a different way.
Sure. I enjoyed the recommended policy changes that you added in the book, and how it tied into what they went through. I remember one of the Melissas said that they attended a charitable event and they only received a $10 gift card. What am I supposed to do with $10?
And
Yeah,
and it
that was a pretty classic example of and I ran a shelter, so I'm part of the system that doesn't do well when it comes to really doing what needs to be done. So I'm as critical of myself and my efforts in that line as anybody else. So it's just, we don't do what we need to do for these families, and then we want to be patted on the back and said, it's really great. And it's like, wait, no, it's not. And we've got to just, I'd like to think we could revamp the system of helping families.
and one
And
of
I
the things that I'm sorry, Diana, go ahead.
I was going to say that one of the things that I think is very prevalent in communities is that they tend to paint homelessness with one brush. You're a homeless person, and I think what comes across very clearly in the three Melissas is that being a parent with young children and experiencing homelessness is just a very different type of experience. And I think in this book, again and again, in our conversations with Melissa's, it just became so increasingly clear that the systems that are designed to serve the homeless, quote unquote, just don't work for families with children. And the difficult part is that communities aren't even aware that there are homeless families with children. I mean, I do a lot of presentations still and to community groups, and their responses. So are there homeless children in our community? And I think the whole issue of families living doubled up, I mean, that's another whole thing where um, they just don't realize how precarious and horrible that kind of situation can be. And so I think that just the focus on families with children who are experiencing homelessness is just something that can't be reinforced too much.
And we always, when we go into trainings, we always talk about, we don't know what we don't know. And I want to help communities, professionals, agencies, all of them to know certain things. One of the things that floored me for years ago is when I said, we're donating these things to the food pantry. How about we do can openers? And when I was presenting, I was saying that to a family member, and they're like, why would they need a can opener? And it's like, okay, so my base level of knowledge is a little bit higher than those who are not in there. So we have to share that. And, it's always good to have resources to have other perspectives of saying, okay, yes, this $10 gift card, we're not saying we're not thankful. We're just saying that your intention of saying this is going to be a Christmas gift is not going to work. And how can we make it? How can we change it? How can we have this organization that has a lot of money really be intentional in providing services that are needed? We have good-hearted people who think that if we put together these care kits, that's exactly what everybody needs, when it's not what everybody needs, nor is it something everybody can handle. So in the book where you talk about the different types of homelessness, doubled up, and how that is, and living in hotels, and how you don't have access to the same things, I think that's just really great that we have those perspectives. And as we start talking about the chapters, I just want to say that I really loved that the way that you structured your chapters, that you had the topic of the chapter as the heading, and then you went into questions to consider, and then the Melissa's tips. And I thought that was a great way to really just be able to focus in on, here is what the questions you should consider. Here are our tips from our lived experience and from our experience learning from our challenges and concerns and mistakes that we may have made. And I really appreciated having that that breakdown, because it makes it easier for folks to follow. And if this were to be put into a curriculum or even just taken sections out for a curriculum, we may use different things in our training for that type of stuff, is really a great way to break down a book. So kudos to you two for really putting that format together to be as a pleasant read as possible when you're talking about this hard topic, and to make it a continued conversation, which we always encourage.
Well, thanks for that. And I will have to say that working with Diana made a lot of that possible, because our two brains work differently. They work well together, I'd have to say. And, we were able to just figure out the best way to share this information, that we had a treasure trove of information. And it was just like, oh, now what do we do with all this? But, I'd have to give her a lot of credit for helping to get this in a readable and something that could be very useful in a lot of different situations, and so we worked well together on that.
It was kind of a tricky line to walk because we wanted it to be tips for families experiencing homelessness, for parents experiencing homelessness, and something that, someone who's homeless would want to pick up and learn some things to make a shelter experience more accommodating, or some things to do when you're living with a family that you should do and not do. But we also wanted it to be an awareness piece for people to read this and to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea. You mean you really need to keep your money in your socks when you're in a shelter? And that kind of things, those kind of details, they don't appear in education books at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you read that, and when you read some of the things that the Melissas had to do to keep safe and clothed and healthy, it just sort of, it really puts you in their shoes, as well as, gives practical information for people who are actually experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, the thing that I just keep thinking about as we've been doing this project, especially, but even before that, in this case, these are three moms. These are mothers who, through no fault of their own, have experienced a horrendous period of time with their kids that really tested their survival skills. And it did so. We give so little help, if any, to these parents, that it's outrageous to me that we talk about, yes, we value families, and we let these families just sink on their own. If that's what's going to happen, that's just too bad. And you just kind of go, wait, these are families, these are moms, these are kids. And I think the way these moms shared their anguish about what their circumstances were and are still, and in some cases, it's like, are we listening at all to, these are parents, these are moms. They are trying to care for their kids the best they can, and we're giving them no help at all. Shame on us.
I think one of the things that became apparent to me and putting the book together was just the lengths the parents would go to make sure these kids had as normal a life as possible. And so, the parents were sacrificing their health. They were staying in places with dangerous people where they were, protecting their kids. They were just, doing all kinds of things that were injurious to them. But their kids were going to school, and their kids were dressed well, and their kids were participating in extracurricular activities, and their kids were eating well. Mm-hmm. And so by all appearances, they didn't have it so bad. It's kind of deceptive, because the parents are just, their lives are being eaten up. But if you look at the kids, it's like, well, they must be doing okay because the kids are well dressed and, they have shoes and coats. And so they miss what's going on behind the scenes to get the kids to that place where they are reasonably stable and healthy. And I think it's unfortunate. And then the other part of that, and just one of the more poignant statements in the book, people are so judgmental of these mothers, for everything they're going through. They're being judged on whether or not their kid has a dirty shirt on.
Right.
And when you look at that and just how cold our society can be towards these mothers that are doing everything they can to give their kids as normal a life as possible, and then will judge them because their kid, is coming to school with a dirty shirt.
And I'm glad that you included a chapter that says judgment-free zone, because we need to highlight that, not just a sentence in a book. And I know in every training we do, that is the thing that we say a lot. Our judgment is not, it stops at the door. We are here to help these students. And I don't know how many times through the years, and I know Diane and I have talked about this, but I do outreaches to unaccompanied teenagers, and I've had more children and teenagers come to me and say, I was told I don't look homeless enough, so they're not going to help me. How do we hide our reaction to that when you hear it, and you want to, because these students are like, especially the teenagers that I do outreaches to, they have jobs that they're biking to. They're doing all of these things, and they're like, well, are you really, Sonia, do we really have to make them McKinney-Vento eligible? Because they're either doubled up, they had that roof over their, or they're allowed to go back home, or just the judgments. And so I'm glad that there is an actual chapter in there, and that when you talk about, especially when you're experiencing homelessness, keep your children in school. That was what the Melissas really wanted to point out, because I think that sometimes, as we know, education is not in their top priority list. And to point that, have parents who lived that experience point that out, that keep your kids in school. One, it's going to help them to be able to do the things they have to do to while during the day while their kids are in school. But as it's stated, it provides a break for the parents, and it gives the parents, as you said, or it gives the children, as you said, Diana, a sense of normalcy, a sense of belonging. The fact that McKinney-Vento really stresses that we're going to have transportation for after school activities now. That was a huge thing when they put that in. It was a startling thing in trying to help our districts figure out how to make this work, but you make it work. We work the problem. Here's what we have to do legally, and I'm going to help you work the problem. So, we go into that lens of education and how important that is.
Well, both of us are certainly McKinney-Vento gals, so we didn't have any hard time at all, including that chapter. But the thing is, the three Melissas, they're the ones that talked about McKinney-Vento in a way that you're like, oh yeah, this isn't just us being, McKinney-Vento. It's like we were all McKinney-Vento. And the fact is that, if this tool can help others get on the McKinney-Vento bus and do what's needed, then we've done our job. And I think that's, you're right. You're right. I mean, McKinney-Vento school, the kids being in school, even in marginal situations where the schools aren't like really doing a huge amount, it's still very important. And so, we're at least hoping to keep the school doors open, and maybe, a little bit more nurturing for the kids. And, and it's good for the families too. I mean, it's just good for everybody, and we shouldn't have to convince people of that.
One of the things that the Melissas highlighted in the book is the role of the local liaisons. And it goes beyond just, this is the person that helps the schools implement the McKinney-Vento Act. The local liaisons, in most of the cases, become this go-to person that links the family with resources. and I think, this was certainly true in my years at NCHE, where we just saw again and again where families and fathers and parents, and they would not go for help with social service agencies. They wouldn't go to shelters. They wouldn't go to food banks, mostly because when they're moving to a new city, they don't even know where any of the resources are, or a rural area. But they will take their kids to school. And when you have a compassionate local liaison who just sort of looks at this family and says, how can I help you? I mean, that, certainly you get the kids in school, you get them, stabilized with their education, but it's so critical for these parents, for the liaisons to be that linkage to the community, and also that cheerleader for them. I mean, again and again, when you have a local liaison that is that person who says, you can do this, I'm going to give you, call this number and come back, let me know how you're doing, or I'm going to call you. It's just it's a big role for the schools and the local liaisons that are willing to take this on, but it makes such a difference.
One thing I liked when we talk about the barriers and, again, the recommended policy changes, and this one, I feel like it's a big one, but the definition of how HUD defines homelessness, I really like how one of the Melissas suggests that the HUD definition should be brought in to match the definition in the McKinney-Vento Act, so that services can be extended to those who are living in doubled up situations or hotels, motels due to a loss of housing. Versus because according to HUD, they're not experiencing homelessness, but according to McKinney-Vento, they are.
And I think the three of us probably have all spoken and educated, trying to lead the conversation with legislators and policymakers. And I remember going down to DC at least 10 years ago, if not longer, to try to get this. So it was good that the book has who's a mother with children saying this needs to change, and not just the professionals who are saying we need to do this.
Yeah, I think you'd find a lot of parents on that bandwagon if they had the opportunity. And the whole thing, it boils down to they're not homeless enough to get help, and they're not homeless enough to be counted. And you just kind of go, this is so absurd that we're just creating more adult homelessness by letting these kids experience the brutalities of being homeless as kids and the trauma, so that when they grow up, they could be homeless too. And it's like, wait, this is really, really counterproductive. So, I think the moms get it. So, if the moms can get it, you'd like to think our legislators and policymakers could catch on.
Well, that's why I like how you wrote align services with needs. Because again, we can offer so many services, but if they're not meeting the needs of the family, then what are we doing?
Yeah, I think you continue to validate everything that we put in this book, so it just makes me really happy.
I do. And another one, and I could keep talking about this, but the domino effect. And it's so true. When one piece falls down, they all fall down. I mean, we try to get, like you said, we're increasing that cycle of, adults experiencing homelessness, but it is so true. A family is trying to work. She's trying to get there every day. But now she doesn't have daycare for her child. She doesn't have family or friends to rely on for babysitting. So she has to miss days of work. Well, then she gets fired because she's not at work. But then to get daycare, you have to meet a certain amount of hours in order to receive subsidy. But then if you make too much and you're above the guideline, you don't receive services, which then you're unable to get daycare. So you're unable to work.
That's perfect. Yeah.
So it's like, what do you expect them to do? So it's a domino effect. It's just,
and that's the one of the lines on page 100. Homelessness is much more than not having a home. You've got all those other things you have to think about. And where one of the Melissas described a lingering condition even after they became housed, PTHD, post-traumatic homeless disorder, that's true. You still have those traumas, and there's still that fine line of poverty and homelessness. The fact that we've had districts say to parents, listen, live on the street for a night, then you're HUD eligible, and those agencies can help you, is if it's the dead of winter and they have children, all of that stuff, yeah. And I know, like, I feel like we could talk about this book forever, because it's just so, again, I think anybody who's listening to this, and we're going to provide links and stuff, should read this book, and should consider, if you're a professional, should consider incorporating it into trainings. If you're someone who's in schools, you can do curriculums at the college level, certainly. But one of the parts also I really liked was the what did you learn from experiencing homelessness, when you asked the three Melissas that. And there were just some great things, of course. One said, I think the best lesson for every human being is to start off poor. You learn to be humble and appreciative of little things. I don't think people understand how humbling you have to be and how appreciative of just the little things. The pandemic was listed as something collectively that I think, when I do trainings, I say that that was probably the most leveling thing that could happen to everybody. So that when I talk to people about doubled up and, the different pieces of homelessness, and I said that March 13th, 2020 came around, and March 15th, all over my Facebook feed, people were saying how they were sick of each other. They couldn't stand being in the same home, and their home had multiple rooms. And I say, how would you feel if you had to be in a hotel? How would you feel if you were sharing a shelter room? How would you feel in a tent? So that was that's a good way to, where people are like, oh, I guess I don't think about that. And, to be able to they didn't start out poor. They had multiple rooms. They could send their children to their rooms. They didn't have to have children who were of different ages doing remote learning with headphones on, and finding out that they had to buy headphones, and, all of that stuff. So just, again, all the chapters and things are just great. And, I have so much highlighted. I can't go through all of it. But I just really, just the intentionality of all of this is great. You did walk that line, as you said, Diana, about a survival guide for parents, but this is also a great way for those who are in the profession or in the community, who have the big hearts, who want to help, how they can help. I don't want to use the word correctly, but that's all I can think of. But how to help more efficiently, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, just the stories that I've heard over the years as I do my interviews for the films that people can watch on hearus.us. You just hear these, I don't want to say the same stories, because they're all different, but they have the same elements. And, it's the parents that are really trying hard and just being stymied every time they turn around. There's this, that, or the other barrier, or these challenges that just seem insurmountable. And, it's just, we expect so much of these parents. There's some good help given, but it's just, how do they make it? Is it just, so they inspire me. And I think hopefully this book will inspire others, the families themselves, to kind of go, wow, these three Melissas went through a lot, and they're sort of on the other side of things now, in a good way.
Yeah.
So, we got to keep going, but hopefully it'll inspire some of the the educators and professionals that are in their paths to, maybe step up a little bit, and let's not dismiss these families because they're homeless. Let's maybe give them a little more help, and maybe some political figures can kind of go, we really don't do enough for families, and maybe we need to do a little bit more because they're going through so much. So I'm just hoping that this book can get out into the hands of just millions of people, and that would be a good thing.
But I am curious, where are the three Melissas currently? How are they doing?
Well, we'll get the real story from them next week as we meet with them. But I have been talking to them, and they're all just, doing the best they can, struggling and have issues still, as everybody does. And but I think they're still excited that they participated in this book, and I think they're pretty excited about getting together. And the audiences that we're going to speak to will probably be blown away by their articulate assessment of what their situations are and what needs to happen. So yeah, they're all doing the best they can.
And that's all we can do. Where can someone go to purchase the book if they're interested in reading it?
Well, the Hear Us website has what I'd like to think is some obvious clues as to and links to where they can get it. And so individuals can buy copies of it. If there's schools or organizations that want to buy bulk copies, that information is on the Hear Us website too. And hopefully they can, and they can just do a Google search now, and it'll probably show up. So
It did actually, because I did it. And it came right
good.
up to your website. So
Oh, good. That's encouraging. So
yeah. I do appreciate the initiative that you both took to create something beautiful.
And is there anything, because I feel like Liz and I kind of hijacked a little bit because we just wanted to point out all the great things in the book, but is there anything that the two of you would like to really express that we haven't expressed through this? Because you're the voices right now.
One of the parts of the book that I think was the most heartfelt and for me most heart-wrenching is the Melissa's talking about how they've come to terms with themselves as parents. I think they've struggled so much with being deemed as bad parents and thinking that they were bad parents and doubting themselves, second guessing themselves, feeling bad that they've exposed their children to this kind of life. And their message to the parents was just so affirming and so supportive, saying that you're doing the best you can. You focus on getting from one day to the next. Your kids are going to love you. And I just think that of all the parts of the book, to me, that I think those comments and those thoughts are the ones that can be the most supportive to parents going through this.
Yeah. And and as you said, Diana, to hear them say that it's hard right now, but know that your children can get through this. You can get through this. We can provide that light of hope that can remind you that, yeah, we're human and things happen, but we can be okay. And you're right. That was a great way for them to allow the parents who are currently in the situation, who may read this, go, okay, I need to give myself grace.
What she said.
All right. Well, thank you, Diana and Diane again. Thank you, Sonia, for joining in too. I do appreciate it. And again, if you are interested in purchasing a copy of The Three Melissas, you can go to the Hear Us website and get yourself a copy. I do recommend it. It is a great read and a great guide. So again, thank you so much, ladies, for being here today. I do appreciate the conversation that we had today. And again, join us for another episode next month for Let's Have a Conversation, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.